In this session of the Purple Coffee Podcast, I speak to Kate Matz about tiptoeing your way into the startup world. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to session 25 of the Purple Coffee Podcast, inspiring stories from creative entrepreneurs. I am your host, Turndog, and on this occasion I speak to the lovely Kate Matz about how she got into the startup world and how it led her to opening up her own business, but how that journey wasn't always straightforward. You see, we quite often start off life with a certain perception of what we want, and we go to university and we listen to others and we delve into the corporate world and into the general 9 to 5 with these expectations of what it's going to lead to. In terms of Kate, she got one promotion after another, but it didn't exactly lead to happiness, and she started to think about what really mattered to her, and working with customers and on strategy was something that got her out of bed with a smile in the morning. However, she didn't have an idea for a business or for a product or for anything like that. She kind of wanted to be an entrepreneur, but didn't know how or what that would entail. So rather than jumping in head first like many entrepreneurs do, she tiptoed into the startup world by getting involved with some inspiring companies and surrounding herself with inspiring minds. This is the big key for today's discussion, because it shows that you don't always have to take a giant leap and you can tiptoe into the world, and along the way learn a few things, allow inspiration to mature, and before long you may have a startup just like Kate. So this is all in aid of my book, The Successful Mistake, a story about an entrepreneur's grand faux pas and how they turned it around. So in terms of Kate Matz, well, I suppose it was getting into the corporate world before she really knew what she wanted in life. So I'm going to pass things over to her now. We're going to share that fantastic interview, and I'm sure you'll be left inspired just like I was. But first, you may not know the full ins and outs of Kate, so I've created a little bio on my old phone, and I shall read that to you now in a way only a storyteller like my true self can do. So sit back and prepare yourself for epic. Kate Matz has the kind of last name a Yorkshire boy like me struggles with. Lucky for moi, she goes by Kate Matz, which isn't only striking and sounds like some awesome private detective, but is also much easier on the tongue. Kate's one of those fine individuals that's seen life on several sides of the sphere. She's been in the corporate world and worked with savvy startups and has collaborated with every type of entrepreneur there is. She's a learner and constant schemer and is now a proud owner of a rather proud startup. In other words, Kate understands things from every other angle there is. Most people cannot say this, which makes Kate Matz a dangerous entity. I'm not saying she'll one day rule the world, but, well, she might do. So stock up on baked beans and dried fruit for Kate's in town. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by Kate Matz, who also goes by the name of Kate Matz, which is very helpful for someone like me who struggles to pronounce the word Matsudaira. Now, Kate, am I even close?
You got it close.
Yeah?
It's Japanese, so it sounds like sayonara.
Wow. Do you want to pronounce it real quick?
Matsudaira.
Matsudaira, fantastic. There you go. I absolutely butchered it. Not even close at all. So thank you for being kind. But I'm very happy to have Kate on board. We're going to be talking about her great mistake. Kate is a bit of a tech whiz kid, and she's also the founder of her new startup, which is Pop Farms, which I won't go into too much. I'll let Kate describe what she's doing there and what it's all about. So to begin with, Kate, just please tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do at Pop Farms University World. And also, thank you for joining me, and it's lovely and pleasure to meet you.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. And I'll just give you a little bit of a background. So I started my career in like big companies and like worked at Amazon.com and Microsoft a long time ago. Uh, and while I was working there, I realized that what I really wanted to do was start my own company. But I was in this big corporate company and I didn't know what I wanted to do and like how to even begin. Because when you're in the big company, you don't necessarily know how to think entrepreneurially. And I always said that I didn't have a good idea, was kind of one of the things I used to say. Um, and so I quit my job and started freelancing for startups. And then I ended up taking a VP of engineering, then CTO role, and then another CTO role. And I was part of three successful startups, two that got acquired, and one is Moz.com, which is still going strong. And um, then I just finally decided to start my own thing. So that was Pop Forms, and that was about a year and a half ago.
Oh.
So it's kind of exciting, but it's one of the things I decided to do with Pop Forms that's a little different. Sorry, I have a little baby coughing in the background. You didn't mention this, but I'm on maternity leave, kind of doing this interview. So juggling being an entrepreneur and a mom, which is I'm
I
a
know, it's
first time
like
mom.
the
So
ultimate full-time job is being a parent. I've just talking about how mine's 18 months old and I remember the 2.5 months. I think you said 2.5 months, right? Is your little fella?
yeah,
Yeah, so
he's
a
a little
very
guy.
cute little age. So yeah, you've got a lot on at the minute between Little Man and Pop Farms.
Yeah, but one of the things I decided to do was do a bootstrap startup instead of a VC funded startup. And part of it was because there's so many strings that come with VC funding and this desire to go big, and I just felt like I could build a great business without that, and that if I was gonna, the outcome. Very few VC funded businesses actually IPO, right? Like that's kind of like the unicorns, and most of them get acquired. And to have like a type of exit and an acquisition that is comparable to what a lot of entrepreneurs have, um, it's easier for me with given kind of bootstrapping or whatever. So I felt like the exit potential was just as good, and I was like, I'm going to build a profitable business from day one. So Platforms is profitable. I mean, we're not super profitable. And as soon as we make more money, I find something else to spend it on. So constantly like reinvesting in the business. But it's really exciting because it's really grown a lot. And so we only have three people so far, so we're still pretty small. Well, actually, like four people now. But you know, it's a lot of fun. But I do a lot. I help with the content strategy. I do a lot of sales. I will write code on the website. Like I'll write blog, whatever needs doing. Like I feel like I do a lot of stuff.
It's always a way for a founder when they go the bootstrapped way. It's always crazy in the early days, and it's an interesting one for you to go to bootstrap because being involved in those bigger companies, that corporate world, to then kind of go the smaller route and the indie route rather than trying to go the VC route. I mean, you would have been, I guess, at home going the VC route because working at places like
Yeah.
Amazon, it would have just been second nature for you.
Well, and I turned down money. Like I had term sheets and I turned them down. And so it was actually I sat there and I was like, should I take investment? And I agonized over the decision for several weeks. Because it makes your life so much easier. I can't even tell you how many times I get so stressed out because like if a deal falls through or something goes wrong or we have unexpected expenses or one of my employees like like whatever, it's so hard because everything is like on my shoulders, and if we don't bring in enough sales or enough money, like payroll comes out of my savings, right?
Mm.
Like that's like I'm self-funding the business.
Yeah, like you say,
So
when there's the VC thing to just fall back on, it just takes away that pressure a little bit. Although adds other pressures in other areas, I suppose.
yeah, and I also decided kind of at the same time that I really wanted to have a baby, and I was like, I'm gonna not take money, and that will allow me give me time that if I want to like have a baby or kind of do that, I can do that kind of on my own and just kind of, I lean really heavily on my team,
Mm.
but it was also part of the plan. I think I could have certainly done it in a VC business. I think that I have a lot more flexibility doing it this way.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree. Well, I'm very excited to hear your insight because you're someone who's seen both sides of the ball. You've obviously seen the bootstrap side, you're living that in the here and now, but you've also been with those big, big corporations where it is a machine and you will remember within it. So, as regular watchers slash visitors will know, this interview is on aid of the successful mistake, and Kate is going to share her great mistake with us and how she turned it around. So I'm excited to hear what you've got to share. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Kate, to let us know about this story, how it all happened, and the journey it's taken you on since.
Yeah, so I think I kind of thought about this quite a bit, and I wanted to pick something that is sort of maybe less entrepreneurial related, but I think something a lot of people can relate to, which is how I started my career. I really wanted to be like a technical architect. I had studied computer science in school, and when I got my first job at Microsoft, I was determined to kind of be the senior technical leader, like the mentors I had had. And the thing is that I was actually much better suited for like management and technical leadership, but it wasn't something I wanted or something I even thought I would be good at, right? And so I think it was like this really big mistake because for like 3 or 4 years, I pushed myself to learn every technical nuance and every detail and to try and hone my craft to be an amazing engineer. And at the end of the day, it was interesting because I was drawn to I ended up going into management, not because I ever wanted to be a manager, I actually didn't, but because I cared so much about what we were doing and why we were doing it. And in my desire to like learn to be a great technologist, I ended up learning the business and ended up thinking about the customers more and wanted it wasn't just about like doing it well, it was doing it right, which is means like, bridging that like building the right thing, which isn't just building the most technically awesome scalable system. It's building the thing that's like the right answer for your customers. And at the time, a lot of technologists weren't necessarily like thinking like that, and so it kind of it changed my path and my trajectory to go in this management sort of way and to become a manager. And then eventually I became like a director. And then, like I said, I started to start my own thing into entrepreneurship. But I talk about that as my mistake because for years I really followed this career path. And I sort of wished if I had thought about it earlier, I would have done a lot of things different. And I think I would have been a lot happier. But, I had like kind of bucketed myself into this archetype. I don't know if that I think about that as a mistake because I just
Yeah.
spent so long in a direction that ultimately isn't where I want to go at all.
Wow. So do you think it was a case of just having too narrow of a vision too early in your career? You thought, this is what I want to do. I'm going to just focus all attention on this and not even consider anything else and just let it play out.
I think I picked my career because of what I thought people wanted me to do.
Okay. Yeah, because I come across this all the time with entrepreneurs as well. When they start their new business, they'll do something and straight away they'll think, right, how do people want me to look? How do they want me to dress and present myself? How do they want me to write? And, what kind of products do they want? And to an extent, you need to think about this. You want to try and make yourself, approachable to your audience. But at the same time, you have to be true to yourself and your brand and your vision. And if you focus too much on other people and what they want, you can lose sight of who you are.
Or like your parents, right? I remember my in-laws told me that they could not believe that I would leave a job at like an Amazon to go to work and start my own company of like 3 people. Like that just seemed crazy to them because to them, getting to work at a big company like that is like the end goal. And so I think it's if you pay too much attention to what other people want you to do and the external pressures that you face versus like what you're really meant to do and what you're really great at, then it can lead you down the wrong path. And that definitely happened with me really early in my career. And I think part of it was I didn't know better, and part of it was I really wanted to please everyone. I wanted the boss who hired me, who was telling me this is what I should do, that's what I should do. But in reality, that wasn't the right path for me at all.
And I like how you say that there's these external forces, because there's always going to be external forces, especially when you're a bit younger. You know, you got university or college, you're kind of told to do things in a certain way. We've all got parents, and some are more supportive than others. You've got friends, you've got mentors, and everyone's going to have their own opinion, and it's quite easy to get lost in all this advice and think, well, I have to do this. This is the sensible way to go. You know, it'd be silly for me to, leave a business or, not try and go to this big company and start my own. Who does that?
Mm-hmm.
So where was the sort of change around for you? Because obviously you started your own business eventually and you got
Mm-hmm.
into management. Was it just a case of you enjoyed working with people more and you realised being a sort of technician and someone behind the scene at all times just wasn't going to work for you?
Um, I think it was like just a passion for the customer and a passion for, not just how we built things, but like what we built. Um, and so slowly I kind of moved into management and then leadership. And then I started realizing, I talk about my career at Amazon, how I was running towards this light at the end of the tunnel because thought I wanted to be like a VP there. And I made it to director before I quit. And while I was there, one of the things that I think really changed, like, it was like I kept thinking that when you got promoted, you would get more involved in strategy. Like, oh, if I make it up a level, I'll be more involved in the company and the direction and whatever. But it actually really doesn't work like that till you're at the very, very top of a company. And that where I was going, I would just be, paid more with a better title, but doing pretty much the same thing I was doing. Um, and I also saw a lot of examples of people who were just like architects or who were just who were at my level. And I initially thought, oh, if I have a big team, that makes me successful. I manage 60 people, right? Like, but then I realized that there were people who didn't have any direct reports that were more influential. And then I realized that there are people who had thousands of direct reports that actually weren't nearly as good as I was. And so I started realizing like that had very little to do with it. And I started looking at what really mattered. And then that was kind of how I ended up into startups and into like entrepreneurship was that, you know, having a lot of people report to you in a big title or a big salary, like you can make oftentimes a lot more money in a startup. You can have more fun, you can have more control. And if you really want a say in the strategy of the business and like deciding what you build and how you build it, the best thing to do is go to a small company where you have that local control and influence.
Absolutely, it is. It's one of those things where when you are part of the corporate world, it has its positives, but you are a cog in a machine and you've got a role, and it very rarely gravitates away from that. But as soon as you get involved in a small business or a startup, especially, you get your hands dirty in everything. If you've got an idea, people want to hear it.
Well, and I think also like in a big company too, like they want you to specialize, and the more specialized you are, the better. And they're actually incentivized to not have you deviate from that because to them, the deeper you are and the better you are at your job, that's great. They don't actually want you to go do a bunch of different new skills or learn all these new things because that's not the best thing for them. And for a lot of people, that's awesome. It just wasn't awesome for me.
So, what do you think sort of changed in your mindset between, I guess, studying when you felt, I want to be the best technician ever, I want to get all of these roles? What were the sort of key things which made you kind of gravitate towards that and think, I want to focus more on the bigger picture, I want to be part of the strategies? Was it frustration or was it any one
Um,
thing?
I don't think it was frustration. I think part of it was learning. I mean, part of it was frustration. I mean, in a big company, inevitably, you're not everyone can be amazing, right? Like, there's a lot of great companies that are very, very successful are built on top of mediocre people. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I wanted to be surrounded by exceptional people, and that's very hard to do in a big company, even great big companies. Um, and so I think part of that, I mean, that frustration might have come, but I think like ultimately at the end of the day, sorry, my little guy's like participating here. Um, he, no, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think it was more of a just desire to, really be able to build things that I was passionate about and to be able to do that on my own terms and working with great people. And uh, if you look at the outcome, so one of the questions, I have a friend who asked me once, um, he wrote a book about it or whatever, but he says, like, what does it mean to live a rich life? Like, if you had all the money in the world today, what would you do every day? And he asked me this question. And I was like, well, I would want to work on the projects I would want to work on with like the people I'd want to work on. And I'd really love to be location independent where I could work anywhere in the world and like have enough money to like take my family with me and be able to like go work in Hawaii or whatever. And he said, and then he's like, well, why don't you do that right now? Like, why don't you figure out how to do that? And I was like, oh, like, I wouldn't even know how to do that. And that was when I started, like, how do people do these things? And I started realizing, like, oh, it seems like startups and entrepreneurship, like, that's the way to get the lifestyle that I want. And so I'm pretty close. Like, I'm not. I'm not making enough money to support my whole family yet, where we can like travel around and work from anywhere yet. But I do have the flexibility that I can be on maternity leave for 6 months, working like 10 to 20 hours a week while I like spend time with my newborn, which I never could have done
Yeah.
when I was in like a big corporate job or in, I know they have better policies in Europe than they do in the US, but, and so I have a lot more flexibility and, I have a great team and employees and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good things. So I guess like it comes down to that question of like, what does it mean to live a rich life? And so for me, I feel like I'm like 50%, maybe 60% of the way there. And I can see the other 50% in the next 3 years.
Great, great. And I think those are the big questions that we all need to ask. And when we're younger, we often think, what should I be doing? And it's tainted by these external influences, be it parents or mentors or whoever. You think, well, the dream is to work for someone like an Amazon. You're going to have all the freedom and success in the world if you do that. But then once you start asking what you truly want in life, you might realize, oh, working for an Amazon doesn't really align with this. What should I be doing?
Yeah. Or how do I get that? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's a really good question. Like, if you
Mm.
had all the money in the world today, what would you do? Like, how would you spend your days? I mean, most people wouldn't spend their days playing video games. Like, you might the
No.
first month,
Yeah, you'd
but
soon
then
get
you're gonna
bored.
then you're gonna be like, okay, like I've had enough Netflix and enough video games. Like, let's see, what else can I do? And for most people, it's like they want to work on projects they're passionate about. They want to work with other smart people. Maybe they want to write a book. Maybe they want to do whatever. And then the question you have to ask yourself is like, why am I not doing that right now?
Yeah. So when you were working in these big corporations, Amazon, was the dream of starting your own business? Did it form there, or was the dream to just move towards these startups, have a bit more freedom, and then the dream of starting your own business started? Was it kind of a step-by-step process, or did you want it all at once?
No, it was more like I knew I wanted to go up the corporate ladder and I thought that was what I really wanted to do. And then one day I realized that I wanted this lifestyle and that the better way to get the lifestyle was through a startup than a big company.
Mm.
And that doing a big company that I would be always working 40 to 60 hours a week to make someone else really wealthy. And yeah, if I kept working the way I was and I was a really hard worker and really ambitious, I'm sure I could have made lots of money and been really successful and a big executive. But I have a lot more of the life I want now, not that life in like 10 years from now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And was it a case once you started working at other people's startups, you started realizing, wow, I want my own. I want this to be
No, I
my
knew
little
I
baby.
wanted my own from day one. I just didn't have an idea. But I
Okay.
think my problem wasn't that I didn't have an idea. My problem was I didn't know how to think entrepreneurially.
Interesting.
Right? Because like once you're around a lot of entrepreneurs and people and you learn to kind of to think entrepreneurially, you come up with business ideas constantly. Like I can't go a day without coming up with a product or a business idea that could make money. Like that's how I think now. But initially, that wasn't how I thought.
Yeah.
That's like a learned way of thinking and seeing the world,
Yeah.
I think.
That's
But
really
initially,
interesting.
so it took me a little bit of time before I was there. And also, I like wanted to save money so that I could, like Initially I was planning to raise money, but I didn't know any VCs, and that seemed really scary. And then once I was on boards and I knew a lot of venture capitalists and everything, then it became more of a I want to save my money so I can bootstrap my company, because it'd be really nice not to have, a bunch of investors if I can get around it.
And again, that plays in the role of your freedom. You wanted to have this freedom. You wanted to be able to, be on maternity leave for 6 months and not have too much stress and worry. So whereas if you'd got the VC, you would have had that external pressure once again.
Yeah, like I have a friend who works at a VC funded startup as like an executive, and she had a baby and only took 6 weeks off,
Yeah.
and then was back at work full time and had to put her baby in daycare. And I'm able to work 20 hours a week while taking care of my baby. I'm doing this interview while he's like
Yeah.
sitting on my lap, you know. But like it's just awesome because I'm getting to spend like these beginning, part of his life with him, and I would have never been able to do that unless I had kind of taken all these steps and kind of put everything in line to like start platforms and make it successful.
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful thing, and like you say, you don't get those days back. So to have that freedom, that's what makes someone truly rich. And I guess a lot of people would be sat at home right now and thinking, "Wow, this is great," because they might not be happy with their job or with the sort of the path they're taking, but they might be quite scared of just jumping straight into the entrepreneurial world. But for you, you just surrounded yourself with other entrepreneurs, the right kind of people, and before long, you started to pick up their traits, and the ideas did come. And before long, that business that is yours did happen.
Yeah, I mean, I often get a lot of people kind of give me a hard time because they're like, very few people have worked for so many successful startups. Oh, sorry, little guy. He's like coughing. So many, like, but I did. And you know how I picked it? I just said, where are the very smartest people I know? Because one of the things that you'll see is when you find like the smartest people that you know doing a company that you know are just really tenacious and hardworking, like they figure it out and they end up having successful companies. And so aligning yourself with those people tend to be like the best thing. So that's what I did. I just looked for the smartest people and I was like, whatever role you want to hire me for, like hire me. Like I'll work really hard for you. And then I just worked my way up and like, I worked really hard. And so I got promoted and I got a lot of opportunities and then so I think that's another big lesson is like, don't be picky about your
Yeah.
don't be picky about your role
He
or your
agrees. He's like,
yeah.
yes, mommy, yes.
Just figure out where the really smart people are and what they're doing and just join them.
No,
And
I
like,
I
yeah, go
really
ahead.
like that. I really like that because I think a lot of people probably see it's an all or nothing thing. You either work for somebody else, you have that corporate lifestyle, or you start your own business or you become self-employed. And a lot of people probably get a bit anxious towards that because they think, well, I don't want to work in this corporate machine anymore, but I don't have this idea and I'm not sure whether I'm an entrepreneur yet. But for you, it's like
Or I
just
don't
surround
have the
us.
financial capital to
Yeah.
feel secure in it. But, I once had to lay off 40 people and at a big company. And I remember going into the conversations and no one expected it. And it was the interesting thing because I I guess I always felt like in big companies your job was secure.
Mm.
And I realized when I was part of these conversations that these people all thought their jobs were secure and they weren't because that project had just got canceled. And that happens. And I started to realize that you know what, you don't have job security in big companies and you don't have job security in small companies. And you don't really hear as many stories about startups that don't pay their employees, except maybe like one paycheck, right? Like most everyone pays everybody like pretty regularly. It's pretty, I haven't heard in 2000 during the big like dot-com boom, you heard some of those stories where people didn't get their last paychecks and stuff. But these days, most people like get paid
Mm.
and like, yeah, you might have to get a new job, but if you work in technology and you are a hard worker and you've built your network and you are willing to give it your all, like you can find work. So I always tell people, like, find the opportunity where you're going to learn the most and where you're going to work with the smartest people that are going places. Because I always talk about you want to look at a 10-year results horizon, not a 2-year.
Okay.
And a results horizon is, looking at your network. So not where these people are now. Like, yeah, they might just be like a program manager, a software developer, but where are those people going to be in 10 years? And can you align yourself with those people, the people that are really going to be doing something amazing? Because that ultimately is like the way to look at kind of your life and your career and your plans is like this longer term, play the long game.
I like that. It's looking at people's potential and thinking, who's like-minded, who aligns with me, and where can we go together? And I think
Yeah.
that's just fantastic advice, because not everyone will have an idea to start that big business right now, or, like you say, have the financials, have that entrepreneurial mindset. But once you start working in a startup and surround yourself by smart thinkers who can hustle, and they've been there and done it, and they're perfect for that role. Before long, it will rub off on you, and you'll think, wow, this is what I was meant to be doing all along.
Yeah. And then when they go to do something awesome next time, you can always go with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I think that's fantastic. So I suppose before we finish up, if you've got just one piece of advice to someone who I'm thinking is in that role still, they're working in the corporate machine and they maybe realise this isn't for me, but they're not too sure what their next step should be. Like, what would your one piece of advice be for them?
I think my one piece of advice would just be to like create a plan. Like, I mean, first ask yourself what you really want. And if you know that's what you want, then like, what do you need to get there? And, if you don't have a network or you can't find jobs, like, get out there and just do one thing. Like, I'm a big fan of there's this book called Slight Edge. I always talk about it. But it's this idea that success or failure, it doesn't ever happen overnight. It's a product of a lot of really of small decisions, right? And you can think about this really easily if you think about like dieting or weight loss, right? Like you don't get fat in a week. You don't even get fat in a month. Like you get fat because you ate like too many calories every day for a year. But I think about getting skinny, right? Like if you diet for a week, you don't really necessarily lose that much weight. But if you are consistent about it and you eat like healthy for a year, like you will lose weight. And so the same thing happens with your career and like success. So just think about the choices you make every day and like instead of watching TV, how about I spend like an hour writing a blog post or an hour like doing some interactions on social media or an hour reading news in my industry and educating myself. Like whatever that is, like just do a little bit every single day and maybe it's just reading 10 pages in a really good business book. And yeah, like in a week, it's not going to make a difference. In a week, you won't even finish one book. But if you just read 10 pages a day at the end of the year, you're going to probably have read, 10 great business books. And if that doesn't make you smarter and more employable and achievable or achiever, I don't know what the right word is to use there. I make up my own words. But if that doesn't make you better, I don't know what will.
Yeah. No, I
So
agree with that.
that's what I think about it. Is just like start making smaller, better decisions every single day.
And it's like you say, it's thinking about that 10-year plan a little bit and thinking, where am I now? What do I truly want, and where do I truly want to be? And what can I do today to just get that started? Well, I'm absolutely loving it. So thank you so much for your advice. What is the name of your little boy?
His name is Jax, Jax.
Jax, what a fantastic name! Because I feel Jax has been a large part of this, and he's been agreeing with you all along. He's been going, "Yes, Mom, that's good advice."
Yeah, he makes like these little noises. At least they're not cries.
He seems to approve. Like my little one would have not sat still all this long. He would have been crying and going, "Come on, we need to go play."
Oh yeah,
so enjoy
he's pretty good.
Enjoy the time when they can just lie down. It's a nice time. It's good. Well, thank you so much, Kate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think your journey is something a lot of people will go through, and working for the people, it's not for everyone, but not everyone's ready to just jump straight into their own business from the get-go. So I like how you bridged that gap by working in startups to acclimatize yourself and be surrounded by fantastic individuals. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And indeed, viewer/listener, thank you for being part of this. So yeah, Kate, thank you and cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another session of the Purple Coffee Podcast at an end. A big thanks to you for joining us, and a huge thank you to Kate for sharing her grand mistake and the journey it's taken on. I think it's something so many people can take something from, because we quite often get involved in a job or a business or a particular industry because we think it's going to fulfill a need. Maybe it's pressure from parents or from teachers or just from society. We don't like the idea of starting our own business because we want big houses and money, and doing that makes it harder, whereas climbing the corporate ladder makes it a much more attainable task. But as Kate found, she just wasn't happy, and no matter how many promotions she got, it just didn't fulfill that need. But here's the big thing. Just because you don't want to be working for someone else doesn't mean you have to dive straight in to the entrepreneurial lifestyle. You can work for startups. You can surround yourself with people who are doing that in the here and now. And over time, you'll learn from them. You will have their energy flow onto you. And who knows when that big idea will strike. And I'm so happy to see Kate now follow her dream and is starting a startup that is growing and thriving and has so much excitement ahead of us. So be sure to check out Kate's world. I'll be providing all her links to her Twitter and website and whatnot below this video and audio, so be sure to click there. But where on earth is this on the interweb? Well, I've created a nice handy little link for you. So if you head over to bit.ly/purplecoffee25, you will find all these links, as well as how to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Vimeo, and through email. Please subscribe. I would love to be able to have you back. And if you do subscribe to the iTunes channel, it would mean a great deal if you left a review. It's a rather lonely place at the moment. So subscribe, leave a review, send me some feedback. And if you would like the podcast sent to your inbox before anybody else, then all you have to do is sign up to the email form. And that's it for another session of the Purple Coffee Podcast. Thank you for joining me, and here's to overcoming grand mistakes.